Cops, what's the most sounding excuse you got that actually turned out to be true? Stopped a guy on a suspended registration and he started getting upset, but not at me. I ask him why he's so upset. He says it's the wife's car. She stopped making payments and it got suspended. On top of that, he was angry because he was on the way to the new GFs and she was probably gonna dump him if he no-showed her. I issued him a criminal ticket, thinking he was gonna back off and leave the story. Instead, he goes, "I totally get why you gave me a ticket, but I don't want this girl to dump me. She's a smoke. Can you give me a ride there?" I say fine, but you have to introduce me, again thinking he'd back off the story. He says okay, deal, and away we go. We're sitting outside and this girl refuses to come out, so he puts me on the phone. I tell her that it's either she comes out and says hi or I bring him to jail. Out she comes. 11 out of 10. Dude hit the jackpot. He also pleaded guilty to the ticket. I never told him to do that, but I got a kick out of it. I like to think it was him giving me a wave back. Story 2. I'm running booking one night. Guy gets brought in for possessing a truly stupendous amount of drugs. I'm talking like 2 Rubbermaid totes full of shrooms, a huge bag of weed, and enough heroin to overdose half the county. Well, says he, I'm a DEA informant, and they told me to make the drop so they could be there and raid the crap out of everybody and let me go for helping. Right. Face left, please. Guy's like, I'm telling you, dude, they're gonna be super pissed that you country retards F up the or bust. Whatever, get in the holding cell and shut up. About 3 hours later, 3 guys show up, DEA agents. They're super pissed that our deputies F up the or bust. I go back to the holding cell to let the guy out, and he's just like, they're super pissed, huh? Yeah, told you so. Story 3. Had a domestic in progress I responded to during Christmas Day, and the excuse for them fighting was, we're not mad at each other. We're just upset because we wanted to surprise the kids for Christmas. We got some deer, dressed them up. Now they're destroying our house. Turns out there was literally 3 fully grown white-tailed deer in the house, somehow dressed with full bell harnesses like Santa's reindeer. I had to call the game wardens down, who were then able to help me remove the deer from the property without injury to us or them. How they managed to get the deer and dress them up is still a mystery to this day. Story 4. Was doing a tour as an MP, not my normal job, but whole other story, and we got called on a domestic. At the house, there is this huge corn-fed guy about 6 feet 4 inches and 275, and a petite Asian girl about 4 inch 10 and 95 soaking wet. The whole house was in disarray, and the call had come because of yelling heard by the neighbors. She was crying and talking in an Asian language that none of us understood, and kept gesturing toward her huge husband. He wasn't talking. We wrap him up, take him to the station, and are trying to interview him, but he's not saying much. We intend to charge him with domestic assault. We notice somewhere along the way that he has horrible welts all along the backs of his hands and along his forearms. It took a lot of prying, but we finally got out of him that his wife would beat him with wire coat hangers when she was mad, and apparently that was pretty often. He was too embarrassed to admit to anybody. We finally got it straightened out, turned her over to the local police, and barred her from base. Hopefully the guy got the help he needed. Story 5. Former park ranger. First week in the job, we pull up and see a couple of kids smoking in their car with the windows down. The city has an ordinance against smoking on park property, but it is too petty to give them a ticket. We approach the car and they are visibly nervous. My FDO looks through the windows and sees a couple of beer cans in the car. Bingo. We get them out and start running their info. They are all underage but old enough to smoke cigarettes. My FDO asks them where the beer came from. The driver says he recycles. FDO laughs and begins to search the car. I'm finishing up running their info, and these guys are being really respectful. FDO finishes searching the cab and goes to open the trunk. All of a sudden I hear him bust out laughing. He is laughing so hard he can barely breathe. He waves me over to look at the trunk of the car, and it is level with crushed cans and bottles. My FDO said that he has heard that excuse for 20 years, and this is the first time it was true. He walked up, uncuffed the driver, and let him go. Edit. There were a lot of interesting chew. Story 6. Popped a college kid for shitty driving and pulled 100 grams of weed off of him. Also, a 1-pound glass pipe shaped like a huge nail. No biggie. Also find weed under the other college kids in the car. Driver falls on the sword and tells me all of it is his and lets his friends walk free. I like this kid. However, during the search we find packaged addies in the cellophane of a cigarette pack with the top melted closed. God damn, it intensifies. Ask kid if he's dealing addies at school. Tell him I'm aware of the prescription pill epidemic. He says no and spins a huge yarn about how he only carries a few on him because he's had his orange pill bottle stolen so many times. Kid seems like a pretty good dude. I decided to take the X-Files approach. Supervisor tells me pursue charges for dealing. Blah, blah, blah. I tell the kid he has one chance to prove he's telling the truth. Shows me the broken glass under his driver's seat from a vehicle burglary. Gotta do better. I follow behind him back to his dorm. He lets me in and shows me the busted footlocker he kept them in under his bed. Dunno. Kinda weak. Supervisor's telling me to hurry and then drop the axe. Tell him to do better. He calls one of the soccer team assistants up, and we meet him in the locker room. Shows me the little wooden locker which has a broken lock. Hey. Assistant coach tells me they have replaced the lock on his cabinet 3 times. Campus security has numerous reports of medicine theft from this kid. Nice. I call supervisor up and tell him I have no grounds to pursue delivery charges. Poor bastard just kept getting his Adderalls jacked, and being the big dumb meatball he was, he started packaging them like that. I end up talking to his best friend breaking up a house party a couple months later. Friend tells me kid is a stand-up guy who only uses weed due to extreme anxiety, totally believable from my interaction with him, and has never sold anything in his life. Friend thanked me and told me his buddy spoke well of me. Friend also tells me he had to drive his buddy to the hospital a few hours after I left from a panic attack due to the whole incident. I felt bad for the kid. So now, whenever I see him smoking up in his car in the mall parking lot, I just wave. Story 7. One night I'm out working, and as I go down the street, fairly nice middle-class area surrounded by some high-crime neighborhoods, around midnight I see a dude on a bike, no lights on, pulling a lawnmower behind him on a rope. I immediately flip a 180 and light him up. Recognize the guy as a local homeless dude with some prior burglary/theft arrests. I walk up and just open with, "Dude, come on." Guy holds his hands out and swears he didn't steal the lawnmower. Claims someone just gave it to him. I ask who, and he doesn't know a name. So I demand he tell me where to find said lawnmower owner. The directions he gave were literally, go that way a bit, then right at a stop sign, and take one of those side streets that way. It's about halfway down a street, at a house that has a pickup and a car in the driveway. By this point backup had arrived, so I leave him in the presence of backup and drive off in search of his mythical donor of lawn equipment. I made a decent guess as to the first turn, then flipped a mental coin as to which of the next 3 side streets he would have gone down. I pick the second of the 3 streets and start down it. Every other house has a truck and car combo. There must have been a dozen houses that matched the description. Halfway down, I see an average-looking house and go, I'll try this one. After all, it's midnight and this is a wild goose chase. Go up, ring the doorbell. Middle-aged dude comes to the door. Hello, sir. Have you been giving away lawnmowers to random sketchy homeless guys at midnight today? Yes. As a matter of fact, he had. Homeowner goes on to complain to me that his wife was upset as his continual inability to get the mower running and had ordered him with some severity to remove the mower from the house or face the consequences. He pushed it to the curb right as homeless guy rode by, and the latter had asked and received his permission to take it. I drove back in shock and amazement, apologized to homeless guy, and sent him on his way. A few months later, we ran into each other at a nearby gas station, and he told me it turned out just to need a new spark plug, and that he had gotten it running again, before going on to sell it for $150 to someone. For years after, whenever I would run into him, he would always make sure to remind me of the money he made from selling that stolen lawnmower. Story 8. Not a cop, but I did get stopped by one for eating a taco. I worked at a community college in LA that had a high school right next to it. Well, there was a lot of drugs sold through the fence at the high school, so there was always a cops driving up and down the street between the schools. Couldn't get a parking pass since I just worked at the school, so I always parked on that street. Hit up Taco Bell for lunch and was sitting in my car eating my double-decker tacos when a cop drove past. Next thing I know, he's flipping a U-turn and heading right for me. He slides to a stop driver window to driver window and yells at, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Stunned, I just said, "Eating my lunch." Well, he isn't buying it and says I'm hiding something. I just hold up my taco and looked so confused. He burst out laughing and peeled out. Saw him a few times after that, and he always waved and had the biggest grin on his face. Story 9. I was driving with my fiancée, and we went through a roadblock where they checked registration and shit, and we get to the cops and they ask for our registration. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, so I open up the glove box and right there is a clear, unmarked baggie filled to the brim with catnip. I completely forgot it was there and just froze. Wide-eyed, I turned to look at the cop shining his light through my open window, and he's frozen too, just staring at the baggie with this look on his face like, really? I just started immediately professing, OMG, I swear to God this is catnip. You can take it and smell it or test it or whatever, like I swear. And at this point it's just so ridiculous that I start cracking up, and the cop takes it and reasonably deduces I'm telling the truth. And he starts laughing and calls his partner over and tells her what happened, and they both just cackled away for a minute and sent us on our way. Story 10. My dad was a cop, and my favorite story of his goes like this. He's a young cop in a rough neighborhood. It's so late that the stoplights are flashing red, meaning treat it like a stop sign. Out of nowhere, this pink caddy goes rolling through the intersection. My dad pulls him over. A big black dude was driving. The caddy had fur interior, dice in the mirror. A real pimp car, if you know what I mean. My dad goes, "Sir, do you know you ran that light back there?" And this guy says, "Officer, I do believe I got between the flashes." My dad was laughing so hard he had to let the guy go. Story 11. I'm a deputy cop, but we work the county/unincorporated areas. Me and a few sector partners, second smallest county in the state, fourth highest population, so we have a lot of deputies in a tiny area. We're hanging out at a gas station at about 3 a.m. to get some coffee and a snack, outside chit-chatting waiting for the next call to come in. Guy pulls up in a pewter-colored Oldsmobile with a hubcap missing, hops out of the car and starts pumping gas. One of us noticed he had a gun holster on his right side but couldn't see a gun because his shirt was over it. Us being an open carry state, no big deal. However, the gun was concealed by the shirt, so we just stopped to talk with him. Explained to him that he can't conceal the gun. He said no problem, it was a mistake from him getting out of the car. Understandable. Other partner looks in the passenger side of the car, and there's a fist-sized saran wrap bag of white powder with multiple $20 bills underneath it sitting on the passenger seat right in plain view. Now to us, a gun, large-size bag of white powder, good bit of money underneath, appears to be drug-related. Start asking the guy like, yo, what is this crap, and why is it just on your seat? He says, oh, it's powdered wall plaster. I just got it from my grandma. It's 3 a.m. at a gas station. I mean, come on. We're cops, so by all means we aren't the smartest people on the planet. But we ain't stupid. Or so we thought. Turns out the dude is 100% telling the truth. Gun was legal and legally obtained. His only history we could dig up was speeding tickets and a simple affray charge from years ago. Grandma gave him the plaster so he could fix a hole in his wall, and he didn't have cash to buy it himself, so she spotted him some moolah. Needless to say, he's got a funny story to tell, and I guess now I do too. He was super understanding, and even himself said it was hilarious because it absolutely looked like pure cocaine, and it looked like a huge amount, at least for lowly street deputies.